Hello, everybody, and welcome to Server and Networking Teams, better together with Juniper Apstra and VMware. My name is Melissa Palmer, and I am totally a server person. I'm a VMware person. I'm a VMware certified design expert, and something crazy hit me this year. I've actually been working with VMware for 15 years, so I don't think it gets more servery than me. And tonight, I'm joined by Claire. Claire, how are you?
I'm awesome. Thanks, Melissa. I'm very happy to be doing this with you. It's been a pleasure. We had another, live session in the morning, went perfect, and I'm really excited to be here again with you in the evening time. So I'm Claire Delcourt. I work for Nuage Networks, so I'm on the networking side of things, and I've been a product manager for Apstra for a couple of years now.
So Claire, before we get into kind of the demo and what we're going to talk about today, can you give me a little overview of what Apstra is?
Yeah, of course. So let's talk about Juniper Apstra. So we are a pure software solution that is taking care of designing, deploying, and operating your data center network. So you can use us for everything from managing the full life cycle of your data center network, from the design to the deployment and building through the operations and day-to-day operations. The key about our solution is that we are completely vendor agnostic, and we work with multiple vendors. So we work on top of Arista, Cisco, Juniper, and the way we do that is by abstracting entirely the vendor-specific CLI and languages from the switches and leveling that up into a very web UI, simple workflows for the end users, so that you don't have to think about vendor-specific things anymore when you operate your network. You can just use the simple user workflow. And I would say the other big characteristic of our solution is that it's intent-based system. So an intent-based system for us means that we are going to constantly monitor the state of the network and assure and give you feedback on whether that's the current state of the network actually match your intent, what the network is supposed to be like based on your design and based on where you are in the life cycle of your network.
That sounds good. And Claire's been nice enough to spend some time with me, the server person, kind of giving me an intro to Apstra and helping me get my feet wet. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at some really common things that people do in a VMware environment. We're going to go over what it looks like when you add like a new vSphere host to your environment, right? So we're going to add an ESXi host to make sure all our networking is correct. I've always seen problems there. Something tends to go wrong. Claire and I were talking about that before. And then we're also going to dive into another scenario where we kind of take a look at, some performance issues in the environment and how kind of the network team and the VMware team can work together to really get to the root of the problem super fast. So let's head on over to the demo.
Sounds good.
So before I show everybody how I've been using Apstra as a VMware administrator, I want to kind of dive into a little bit more about our physical network that we're working with today. So if I come over here to manage devices, I can see all of the managed devices that I have in my network, and I can see what blueprint that they're mapped to, and we're going to be spending a lot of time with that blueprint. But if I click on one of my devices, I can get a lot of really great information about it. So I know what model I'm working with. I know things like my host name, if I need my serial number, know my management IP address, all that stuff is really easily accessible right from Apstra. Also, one of my favorite things is if I want a quick way to look at the configuration, I can come here and take a look at how things are configured. And then if we come over to telemetry, we can see that we've got lots of green check marks and everything is looking good so far. If I come back here and I want to dive a little more into this physical piece of hardware and its capabilities, I can do that as well right here in the device profile view. So I'm going to scroll down. Here's the type of ports I have in my switch, so I know, okay, this is what I'm working with from a physical layer. Now I want to kind of jump into the blueprint. And Claire, what I think the blueprint is, as I've been working with it, it's really kind of that mapping from my physical network to my virtual network and how I have everything configured in my environment. Is that right?
Yeah, so the blueprint from an Apstra perspective is basically the representation of your fabric network, and any information that we fetch from the VMware or vSphere that you have hosted in that network combined together in a single unified view.
All right, so if I click into my blueprint, we can get a lot of great information. We're going to be spending a lot of time in our dashboard view. But right now, I want to take a look at what I have going on in my environment. So if I come over here to my active view, I can actually look at my physical topology. And my favorite view right here is if I come over to full and expand nodes and show links, I can see how I have pretty much everything configured in my environment. Now, one thing that's jumping out right at me right now is that this switch right here is red, which tells me that something's going on. So I can click into it a little bit more. I can see what ports are configured. And the issue with this right here is that this switch is expecting to see an ESXi host on the other end. And right now it's just not seeing it because I haven't configured it in the vSphere pane of things yet.
That's right. So because of the telemetry that we collect with Apstra, we are able to tell you whether what you expect your network to look like is actually what is like in reality, using all those telemetry information. So indeed, here you have an interface anomaly, means that you expect a server there to be connected and the interface to be up, and it's not.
All right, so let's go and try to fix that. We're going to connect this server into our vSphere environment. So I have a brand new host. I built a couple VMs. If I come over to networks right here, you can see I have nothing but my basic networking. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come over and add this to my distributed virtual switch. So we're going to say add host right here. I'm going to add a new host. I'm going to select my host. We're going to click next. And now I need to assign some uplinks. So I know that VMNIC2 and VMNIC3 are the NICs I'm going for, and I'm using LACP, so I'm going to create a new link aggregation group. So I'm going to have this on my first port of my lag, and VMNIC3, we're going to assign to the second port. We're going to click OK. We're going to click Next. Everything looks good. A lot of next in vSphere. Click Finish, and now my new host is now in my distributed virtual switch. So if I come back over to my host right here, we can see that now I can see all of these different port groups for my distributed virtual switches. So if I come back over here to Apstra, I'm going to go back to my physical configuration right here. I'm going to show everything. Actually, I'm going to come over to this active view right here.
Right. The active view is actually the current network state, an indicator that everything is configured according to your intent.
Exactly. And now we can see just in front of our eyes, everything turned green. So now Apstra knows, okay, you connected your vSphere host and everything's looking good.
That's right.
So if we come on over here and we actually go ahead and look at our lag on our ESXi host. Oops, I wanted my switch, I think.
Right, so if you want to even go deeper and look at actually what is the LLDP neighbor information that we gather from the remote hosts, you can click on the shortcuts on the top right and see the telemetry.
Oh, here it is. Look at this, right?
Right. So this is like the anomaly is gone. And if you want to click back on the switch, you can see the telemetry collected for that particular switch, clicking on the blue link.
There we go, that blue link.
And then clicking on the telemetry tab. I'm going to guide you a bit.
Oh, here it is.
Yes,
up on the top.
And then there you can actually,
now we can see.
Yes, exactly. You can see why do you think that everything is green? Because what we see is what is expected to be, right? So we show you the actual state of the network versus expected, specifically here for the LDP neighbor information.
All right, so let's head back to vSphere now and continue configuring our distributed virtual switch. So I'm going to come over here and I'm actually going to add a new port group because we have some new applications coming online. I'm going to say a new distributed port group. I'm going to call it port group 303. We're going to use VLAN 303. That looks good. And now I need to actually add a uplink to this port group right here. So we're going to say edit settings. And if we come over to teaming and failover, I need to get rid of all these uplinks I'm not going to use first and foremost. And now I'm going to pick lag 2 for my uplink. So we're going to click OK. That looks good. And once again, we're going to head back to Apstra and see what we can see. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go back to my blueprint. I'm going to click in. Love this dashboard. We're going to use this a lot today. Come over to my active view. Everything is actually looking pretty good, but I want to come over to virtual now and virtual infra inventory. And here we can see I actually spelled port group wrong. I made a port group, but we have port group 303 right here. So that's exactly what we're expecting to see, right? We added a new port group in vSphere, and now we can see on the network side on Apstra that we have a new port group.
Right, and all this is automatically fetched from the vSphere center to Apstra through our VMware integration plugin. So every time you do a change as a vCenter user in your vCenter vSphere environment, we automatically see it, and we are aware of what you deploy in terms of virtual infrastructure on your server.
Okay,
and
so
we're going to see why it's going to be useful.
Yeah, I think I'm doing pretty good as the VMware person getting into the network here. But now let's keep on going with our vSphere configuration. We're going to come back to here, and now we're going to put a couple of VMs on this port group. So let's edit the server here. We're going to give it port group 303. That looks good. And then I'm going to come over to VM3 over here. And once again, I'm going to edit that real quick and just change the port group. Okay, so we made a couple changes in our network. I think I should be doing pretty good at this point. So how about I come back here? I'm going to launch a web console. And I think I should try to ping the 2 VMs, right? Because I had 1 VM on one port. I have 2 VMs on the same port group, and they should be able to talk to each other, right?
Let's see. We don't know at all what's going to happen.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Because
that doesn't look good at all.
So here right now, you don't have any connectivity between those 2 VMs.
No, that's going to be a little bit of a problem. So let's go back to Apstra, and maybe Apstra can help me out here real quick. So if I come over here to stage, right?
If you go under active.
Active. I always miss these 2 up. So query, and then I'm going to look at all the VMs. Right. And I was working with VM client 3, which I don't see anything about a port group or any kind of information here. And then the other one I was working with was another VM, but there's nothing here, which tells me that I did something wrong in vCenter, because if it was connected to the fabric, Apstra would know about it.
Right, so here we basically show you the inventory you have in your vSphere and how it connects to your fabric. We can see that VM Client 1, VM Client 2 are connected to port groups that are then connected towards the Apstra managed fabric. And then we can also see that from some of the VMs, especially the ones that are on ESXi3, it doesn't seem, according to vCenter, seems connected to the fabric at all.
Yeah,
so the first thing that you want to make check is that.
Yeah, I think I did something wrong in vCenter. So let's come back here. And I'm going to have to look at my distributed port group again. So let's take a look, edit settings. And let me look at my uplink. And I see the problem right here. I picked lag 2, but we're using lag 1 to connect to our fabric everywhere. So that's our issue, I hope. So I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to switch to lag 1. I'm going to click OK. And the next thing I'm going to do is let's go back to VM Client 3, and let's go back to Apstra. And hopefully...
So now that you have reconnected your port group to the fabric, then Apstra will fetch that information out and populate it here. So you can, in one glance, confirm at least that, the VM that you expect connected to Fabric is connected to Fabric.
Oh, here it is.
There you go.
All right, so we can.
So that's one problem out of the way. Yes.
All right, so we're doing pretty good. But these are a lot of things. I've done a lot of vSphere, especially vSphere networking, and these are like some of the most common things you do as you're bringing a new server or a new application online, right? Oh, I added the wrong uplink to the port group, or I named the port group wrong, or I did something wrong. And Apstra makes it really easy to catch a lot of these different issues. So we come back over to vCenter and we take a look at our ping here.
It's still not working.
It's still not working.
So let's figure that out. Obviously, you have configure per group correctly on each of the hosts, and they are correctly connected to the Fabric. Now, what you're probably missing here is that there's nothing configured in the Fabric to transport the traffic from one host to the other.
So I messed up something else when I configured this? I think we should head back to Apstra.
Yeah. Okay.
And let's take a look at the dashboard. And did you just see a bunch more anomalies popped up on this dashboard? We started and they just increased. We have a nice little history of what happened right here. And if I scroll down, we can see that here it is. The hypervisor VLANs are missing in the Fabric. So I never actually configured my VLAN 303 inside of the Fabric, and Apstra's telling me right here that, hey, you have 2 VMs that are affected by this VLAN misconfig. That's definitely not a good thing. So I think we just want to try to fix this and get our application working. So I'm going to click Remediate Anomalies right here. We're going to add a new virtual network, but we can see right here that I have a build error. So Apstra's still saying, hey, you didn't quite finish configuring everything. So I'm going to come over to staged here. I'm going to follow the red error messages, and Apstra's just going to kind of guide me through fixing everything. So we got VN 303 for VLAN 303. We obviously need to do a little something with that. So let's edit this. And I'm going to turn off DHCP, and I'm going to turn off IPv4 connectivity. I'm going to say update.
Right. So here, basically, what happened is that we try to resolve the anomaly by configure a VN VXLAN type network in the Fabric. However, we still need your user input on whether you want that VN to be a layer 2 VN or a layer 3 VN. And we're guiding you through the process of finishing that configuration.
All right. I see lots of different green things now, right? So I come back to my dashboard. I see lots of green. I'm going to click Remediate Anomalies again.
So you have staged your changes.
Now we need to commit them.
Correct.
Because I have all these kind of changes that I've worked on in Apstra. Now I need to send them over to the active side of things. We're going to click that commit button.
For every commit that you do, you can actually describe and add a comment about why you did that commit, so that you have a historical trace of every single change you've made in your Fabric and why you made them, and then use the time wager feature to roll back to any of those revisions.
As you can see, I was using this feature a little earlier this week, a great way to quickly undo anything or revert to a previous state if you need to.
Yep.
So let's check vCenter. So hopefully we're looking good. And look at this, we're pinging finally, which is
pinging.
All right, so we've got connectivity between our two servers. We added our host, and we're in pretty good shape. But, there's a lot of things that can go on in a vSphere environment and really impact performance, especially when it comes to the network. So what I want to do now is we're going to start up iPerf. We're going to generate some traffic on our network, and we're going to kind of simulate maybe a runaway application or something that's going on and impacting performance, and take a look at what Apstra is going to pick up on.
That sounds good.
All right, so let's head back to our dashboard. We like our dashboard a lot here. So we're going to go back to our dashboard, and you can notice that the number of anomalies also just dropped a lot because, hey, guess what? We're good to go, and we've fixed all those issues. Now, something that I think is really interesting personally is the analytics that you get inside of Apstra, right? So there's a lot of different ways to look at different information in here. We'll spend more time with our dashboards, but I want to actually look at some of these probes. And what I've noticed on probes is they just kind of gather information about your network. So if we look at this device traffic probe right here, we're going to take a look here, and we're going to see some traffic coming in, right? So we could see right here that we've got 45% link utilization, right, on this particular port.
Interface, yeah.
And that's really nice to know, right?
Yeah, so in
really
analytics,
useful.
yeah. So you can see under analytics, we have like those probes that are just about collecting information at high scale about the network state. But then we also have those more complex probes that collect telemetry information in order to answer a very complex question about the network status. And that's what we use. That's where we use a series of data processing to compute that type of more complex validations.
Exactly. So we have a probe that we've set up a little bit ahead of time. I want to click into it and take a look. And this is, it says it's disabled right now. We'll turn it on in a couple minutes. But one thing I want to point out is this range right here, right? Because it's really great to come in here and look at this information. But I want to know if, you know, my environment is reaching a certain link utilization. So for example, we created a copy of that probe for looking at the device traffic. And we said, hey, we need to know if anything is over 40% utilization, right? Because we're getting close to 50% utilization on a link and things are getting a little iffy. So let's turn this on. Right now it's disabled. And let's see what happens. We've got another anomaly. Look in here.
So there are, just in terms of device traffic, just to come back on this probe a little bit. Mm-hmm. So the device traffic probe collects a bunch of information on the traffic utilization going through your fabric networking interfaces. And that data is exposed, like you showed earlier, in real time in tables. We also expose it on top of the topology view, so you can see kind of like what are your heated switches and links.
Oh, okay. Let's come back to our active configuration, right? We're going to come
yep.
To our full view here.
Right.
And then I'm going to change this label right here. No, I'm not. So here we go. This is where it is, right? Traffic heat. That's what we want to see.
Correct. Yeah. The traffic heat is a more like visual representation on how, you know, how busy are the fabric interfaces right now towards your servers and between your leaves and your spines. And you can drill down into a specific node.
What's your favorite node that we're working with today, Claire, that I should look at?
Well, the orange one.
The dark orange one.
Seems like it's getting a lot of traffic.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So right now you're using Hyperf to kind of generate a lot of traffic. If you can look at the traffic information by mousing over specific interfaces, and you can see the real-time traffic information there and all the various counters that we collect about traffic going through that interface. And then if you want to actually understand what is the minimal guaranteed bandwidth between all your servers and your client, you can select a source server and a destination server and see the full heat of the traffic across the entire path of the network. So for example, right now you're sending traffic from ESXi1, I think ESXi2 to ESXi1. So if you select ESXi1, 2, sorry. Yes, and you click on header view. And you can see you're sending traffic, all of your traffic, hyper traffic is going right now over Ethernet 1. And if you want to see like the full path towards ESXi1, you can select in the neighbors dropdown, select ESXi1. And here you have the full visibility of your end-to-end path between your two servers and how much traffic utilization that's currently going through. This is real-time information. You can also use the time series visualization or widget to go back into a historical view of things and look at how your network traffic utilization was, an hour earlier. So if you click on the little line above, then we're loading.
Oh yeah! Wow.
So this is very much more raw data. Like you would have to come intentionally in that view to see how things right now or how things were yesterday. what you were trying to do with that new probe was very interesting use case.
Let's go back to our analytics.
Yes.
And click on our probes that we have. And we've got this one right here that was really interesting.
Right. Yes.
And it's pretty much...
Mm-hmm. So go ahead.
And it's pretty much telling us where the issues are in our environment, right?
Yes. So basically here, you recreated a probe from scratch to answer a very specific question about your traffic utilization. Is it impacting any links toward your critical server host, which is the ESXi1? So instead of having raw traffic visualization, you can now ask EOS to raise an anomaly about traffic utilization going towards specific nodes in your network or servers in your network where your critical applications are, for example.
Okay.
And it was interesting what you were explaining earlier, how you can change the range of the probe to your liking, right?
Yeah, right here, if I just come in here and edit, right here we have it set to more than or equal to 40%. And we can also change what we're looking at. So we're looking at transmission specifically and 40% utilization on a link. So what if I wanted to kind of put that into a dashboard, right? I want to have my VMware team come in and I maybe want to give them their own kind of view of things.
Right. So, you can take the probe you just created and based on which output of the probe you're interested in, you can create a widget out of it, which is going to be a visual representation of that particular stage or anomaly, and put that into a custom dashboard for your team to look at later on. The advantage of that is that instead of having, you as a VMware expert always have to ask the Fabric network expert to see how traffic is going towards your server, you can just have your own read-only user in Apstra to go and have a look at those things by yourself without having to go through a third person.
All right, so I want to make a new dashboard. And I'm going to make something for our VMware team. And we're going to add some widgets. Now, we're going to pick that critical servers traffic monitoring we've been working with for sure. But let's add a couple more. We're going to add hypervisor and Fabric VLAN config mismatch, right? That was one we caught today. That was a big one.
Yep.
We're going to click hypervisor VLANs missing in Fabric because the VMware team might not have communicated to the network team that they needed these VLANs. So we're going to keep an eye on that. And then another one that I personally really like a lot is the hypervisor have inconsistent MTU. I do a lot of IP storage. And there's always been this war of do you or don't you use jumbo frames? And it's one of those things, if you don't have it configured end to end, you're almost guaranteed to see problems.
Right. Another interesting widget, if we can add one more, is the detection of lag imbalance.
All right, that's a good one too.
Here, towards your storage, you have two links configured in a lag. So any of those links could be used by the storage. Now, if one of the links gets overused much more than the others, you can flag that using this anomaly.
All right, so we're going to create this dashboard. And we can see right here, we know that we have some links that are overutilized in our environment, but we fixed a lot of stuff today too, right? So we know our hypervisor and our Fabric VLAN config is good. We're not missing any VLANs in the Fabric because we fixed that. And we haven't set up IP-based storage quite yet, but when we get to that point, we're going to make sure that the MTUs are consistent across the board using Apstra.
Right, that's awesome. See, your traffic probably hyper commands stopped, and now...
Yeah, and then everything went back to green, right?
Right.
So you can see right here on the main dashboard, we've gone down to 3 anomalies. And then if we come back to my dashboard I just created, and that's in analytics, right? The custom ones.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's interesting also to explain how you configure your critical, critical service impacted by high traffic utilization probe, because we didn't have to actually specify the exact server, right? We used the concept of tags.
Right. So if I go back to my active configuration and I look at my ESXi hosts, right? We're going to go for that. We can come over to tags, and we can actually assign tag sets that we have to do in the staged portion, not the active person, because if we're making changes, we're staging it first before we're committing them always.
Yes, that's right.
So if I come back to physical here, I need to come back to my here, click on ESXi3 because that's our favorite server of the day today, right? And we're going to simply add a tag to ESXi3. And then
right.
while we're here, we might as well add them to 2 and 1 so we're consistent.
So ESXi1, that was the server that you already were monitoring with that tag. And you can add this tag to any other ESXi server. So the probe start now monitoring those additional server immediately.
Oh, okay. So that's kind of something just to know when as the VMware person, when I'm in here and I'm onboarding things, I should tag all my servers so that when I'm monitoring things, I'm doing it consistently across the board.
Right. And if you want to build probe for specific server, you can just define a new set of tags for those specific server and only assign that to a subset of the group of server.
That's a really good point. So if I have kind of different thresholds on different clusters based on their purpose, like I've been in environments where we say, okay, mission critical apps are all in the same cluster, I might have different monitoring thresholds for that cluster specifically than some of my more general purpose clusters.
That's right. I think maybe the last thing that I'd like to show you is if you go back to the Active tab, you saw how we collect information about the VM queries, right, from vCenter. We actually also show you on top the VM information on top of the topology information. So if you're looking for a specific VM, if you go back onto the physical topology, you can use the layer thingy to ask a question to AOS, do I have hypervisor in my fabric? Or do I have VM in my fabric? And if you expand in the topology view, then we're going to highlight for you which physical server are actually ESXi host and are actually hosting VMs.
So those are green right now, right? Because I know they're all production ESXi hosts, and like we saw in vCenter, we have VMs running on all 3 of these.
Yes, and if you want to see the exact list of VM per host, you can click on the ESXi3, for example, node, and then go into the tab on the right to see the current active VM.
Right here, we have 2 VMs, and we have VM client 3, which we were using before and pinging with, and we have another test VM.
Right. And I think that could be, I mean, the reason why we expose it that way is also to give the fabric network operators a quick understanding of whether the rack or the leaf is going to perform an operation on is actually hosting critical applications right now.
Yeah, that's a great point too, right? Kind of just the communication between the network people and the storage people. This is a really great way for everybody to collaborate together. Instead of me going to the VMware team as the network person, I can just come in here and say, hey, VMware team, I noticed that you have a bunch of VMs on this specific host. We're going to do some maintenance that might be impacted. Maybe you should move those ahead of time.
Exactly. We were trying to really increase collaboration between the vCenter teams and the Fabric Network Operation team without having to rely too much on each other and being able to troubleshoot issues related to configuration much faster.
All right. So that was a really great overview of kind of how to use Apstra to onboard a new ESXi server, one of the most basic things we do in the environment, and then to dig a little deeper between the server and the networking team and kind of see, hey, what happens in some of these common issues that we have pop up, right? When we have too much link utilization, how do we find that and how do we work together to fix these issues?
Yes. Thank you so much for driving the demo. I think you did an awesome job on Apstra.
Thank you very much for kind of teaching me the ropes here, Claire. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
So that was some of the most common things that I kind of do as a VMware person and how we streamlined everything with Apstra. Claire, we have a bunch of questions that have come in the chat, and if anybody watching has any questions, please put them in there, and Claire and I are happy to answer them. So Claire, I think this first one is for you. Can you talk a little more about how Apstra gathers information from the vCenter server frequency, type of communications, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, of course. So Apstra communicates to vCenter through the vCenter public API. There is no specific development that VMware has done for us to make that communication happen. We use what's available, and the only thing that we need to do to make that happen is create a read-only user in vCenter and provision that user and credential into Apstra for Apstra to be able to fetch all those information directly. In terms of polling interval, it's entirely configurable. I believe that default is set to 5 seconds or something like that. One thing that I want to add to that is that if you are using NSX and not vSphere as your network manager for your server, we also have the exact same integration with NSX, and we pull the same information, we provide the same visualization and validations in Apstra for NSX as well.
All right, great. And another VMware type question, I might go for this one. What information does Apstra gather about virtual machines deployed on ESXi? During part of the demo, you saw a great view when I was looking at my VM and I was saying, okay, I can tell that it's not connected to the fabric. But the truth is Apstra grabs a lot of information about our VMs, really anything that the network team would ever want to know. So we have like the VM name, MAC address, IP address, what port group the VM's connected to. And Apstra also collects information about the host, right? We saw the host name in there and stuff like that, the version of ESXi, and whatever virtual switches that it's connected to, a standard switch, distributed switch, and of course, like Claire mentioned, any NSX information if you're using NSX. Another good question. Oh, I love this one. We're growing and adding new racks frequently. That's the magic of VMware, right? We just keep on growing our environments more and more and more. How can Apstra help streamline that process? And I think we actually showed a pretty good example of that during the demo. You know, Apstra really provides vendor-agnostic workload to streamline those day 2 operations in the network, like adding a rack or adding a server like we showed you. But again, you could be doing exactly what I did tonight, but adding more than one ESXi host at a time, right? You can add that whole new rack to your environment. The workflows are designed for simplicity and really provide that closed-loop validation to the user, so we know once we get everything online, hey, everything looks good. We have all these green check marks everywhere. We don't have any red errors, and Apstra kind of guides you through the remediation process if you do have any of the common issues like we showed tonight, like, okay, I forgot to add a VLAN somewhere. Well, Apstra will show you that, and it's really quick and easy to remediate.
Right, and you know, a key point that we saw today and we learned is that everything you've done yourself in Apstra did not involve any vendor-specific CLI comments or any expertise in what was the switch, vendor underneath it. You've done all those things. You've created networks, VXLAN type of network in a EVPN fabric, just using abstraction, right? Not of services.
It's almost kind of like VMware for networking, right? We're just going to put Apstra on top of everything, and we don't really care what's underneath anymore.
We don't, exactly.
And that's probably one of my favorites, right? When you're managing an environment, oh, I've got this vendor over here and this vendor over here, and how do I manage them differently? You save a whole bunch of operational overhead by using something like Apstra to do all that basic configuration for you.
Right, exactly. And I mean, that's, the whole work of generating configuration for vendor-specific devices, making sure the configuration is automatically deployed in an incremental way on large-scale network is the job of that solution, not yours anymore.
Absolutely. All right, one last question for you, Claire. How can I learn more about Apstra and VMware integration?
So you can learn more about Apstra by simply trying it online. We have a bunch of, we have free trials of that solution available for everybody. If you want to see specifically VMware integration, to work and play with that, I would suggest you contact your Juniper Networks partner or account manager, and they will be able to set up something for you. We have a bunch of virtual labs, we call them. That's what we're using actually today to set up those type of demo very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to say to everybody who tuned in, thank you for so much for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed our demo. And please go ahead, download Apstra and try it for yourself. It's so simple to use.
Thank you.
Thank you.